qualifying on the Singapore Grand Prix 2022.
Should be a very interesting qualifying session ahead of us today, with Ferrari showing early dominance in free practice 3. And it looks like we have people about to go out on intermediate tyres, so the track is definitely still a bit wet from
Yes,
earlier today.
I'm currently in the cockpit with Fernando Alonso. Very interested to see how he does this time round. He's been doing some very quick laps over the weekend. So I imagine his qualifying time should be putting him inside hopefully the Q3 session as well, as I reckon he could very well be the dark horse for qualifying today, and I reckon he may be ahead of a Red Bull or a Ferrari or two.
Yes, by the looks of it at the moment, he may be able to outperform Sergio Perez, who did not have the greatest FP3 session,
No,
as we
and
are live for the
yes.
first qualifying session of the day.
So, reminder for Q1 for Formula One is 18 minutes long. And what's interesting is that Russell is the first driver out onto track, and it's the complete opposite to the practices where the Mercs have always been staying in for a bit longer than they should have. Well, not necessarily should have, but than they could have. And we've got both Russell and Hamilton straight out to start off the qualifying session for us.
George Russell starting his warm-up lap ahead of his first fast lap attempt. Looking quite dry out there. We may not be very far away from dry tyres at all. We don't see any spray coming off of the cars, so maybe there's just one or two sectors that are still quite wet. But other than that, it is looking relatively dry out there.
It's sector 2 that's still a bit wet from earlier as well.
But
So,
as we get some more running, we should be able to dry it up quite quickly.
indeed. Only 7 cars on track at the moment, with the 2 Mercs, 2 McLarens, and what looks to be, let me just check, it looks to be Tsunoda and Gasly of the 2 AlphaTauris, who are also out on track.
Beautiful shots here above from the helicopter of the entire circuit, illuminated by all the lights here in Singapore. What a spectacular Grand Prix they are putting on for us this weekend. First time that we are here since 2019. So it is great to be back. Last time we were out here, we had Sebastian Vettel winning as well as he was on pole. So in the last couple of Singapore Grand Prix, whoever has been on pole has taken the win. So it is definitely a very important qualifying session here today.
100%. And currently following here, Norris, who's had rather disappointing weekend so far in his in his newly upgraded McLaren. So I'm interested to see how he does in qualifying. He might, if it goes poor qualifying, he may not even make Q2.
No, uh, going off of free practice 3, he would not have made it into Q3 or
And we see
Q2.
here Russell starting the first hot lap of qualifying, as well as trying to avoid all the cars coming out of the pits right now, as everybody is now
So
sort of
far,
entering.
quite clean, but sliding a bit around. These intermediate tyres possibly heating up a bit in the drier sections, but so far looking quite good.
And it looks to be like Hamilton is going to be following Russell during this little start of our qualifying here. All the cars are pretty much out on track except for the Red Bulls, the Alfa Romeos, and Alonso and Vettel of the Alpine and then Aston Martin. So they will come out on track shortly, I'm sure. But we're just going to follow Russell here as he puts in a sector 1 that Hamilton has already beaten. So Hamilton has now purpled the first sector. So
I
closing in on
don't
his
think they
teammate.
will hold on to that for very long, as they were not performing as well as they were in the dry sessions today in FP3 when it was a bit wet. But if it does dry out, we could be in for a 3 horse battle for for Q3.
So currently now all of our cars are on the track or coming out onto track. We can see that Verstappen's just joined. So has Vettel, and Perez has just also joined the track. I imagine the Alfa Romeos will be shortly following suit, and we will have all cars on track.
If you look at our uh, track map here, you can see how twisty and turny these different sections are of the track. Obviously, the tighter sections, uh, the Ferraris are much better in with their more high downforce, and the Red Bulls are quite fast in the straights. So it's quite evenly matched here today. But let's hope that we will have quite a good fight till the end of Q3.
Indeed, and we see that Russell's just put in the first lap time of a 1:57, and Hamilton joins that with a 1:56.9. So still some slow times, about 10 seconds off what we were seeing yesterday. But I imagine we will see these quickly be beaten as the time goes on and as the track warms up. We are seeing now people starting to put in their first few times.
Yes, as we have the AlphaTauris finishing their first laps. Gasly 2.8 seconds behind Hamilton, and Tsunoda 1.7 seconds behind Hamilton. As we have Sainz now starting his hot lap. Daniel Ricciardo and Lando Norris have finished their laps, with Daniel Ricciardo finishing quite a bit ahead of Lando Norris.
Clearly something happened in Norris's lap, obviously, because he's well off the pace, about 7 seconds behind the lead time versus Ricciardo's 2.8. So
I think
clearly
he may have abandoned it halfway through,
yes,
or possibly in the last sector, because he is very much off the pace of his own teammate with an older spec car. We now have the two Hasses out on track, as well as Verstappen and Perez, everyone at the moment running intermediate tyres.
Interesting enough, Sainz is now doing his first hot lap and has not purpled the first sector against the two Mercs.
We often see, though, the Ferrari making up a lot of time in the second sector, as Leclerc goes fastest in the first sector.
So Leclerc takes first sector fastest, and Sainz still has not purpled the second sector either, and is currently running at 0.5 seconds behind Hamilton's time. However, it looks like Leclerc should be putting in the fastest lap time should he just continue his lap as he's doing it right now. We'll see how Sainz finishes up with this last sector here, but Leclerc going through quite nicely, it seems.
As we have a quick yellow flag, someone has possibly gone off shortly.
We are now following Leclerc's race, I think, instead of... No, this is still Sainz? This is Sainz. And Sainz is just coming to the end of his lap now, and see how he does against Russell. Still a bit slower, quite a bit slower. Yeah, goes into fourth place behind Ocon and the Russell and Hamilton of the Mercedes. Leclerc, however, has just purpled the middle sector. I believe, considering the first sector is now no longer purple for Leclerc, that I imagine Verstappen has just...
As Stroll goes into third place with a 1:56.9, 1.1 seconds off of Russell. So it shows that Russell and Hamilton may still be off the pace if the Aston Martins are able to keep up with them. So hoping to see some good times coming in now from Verstappen.
Here comes
and
Leclerc potentially putting the new fastest lap in.
There is a yellow flag in sector 3.
And
which is staying on, so...
We have a fastest lap now from Leclerc at 1:55. Verstappen is following that in. He's purpled the second sector, whilst Perez has purpled the first sector.
Off his lap by the looks of it.
Yes, I believe the yellow flag has unfortunately
caught Verstappen
out on his lap, so that's quite disappointing for Verstappen as he did purple the middle sector. Perez
with the new rules,
looks to be still going though, so we're going to follow Perez right to the end. He looks like he could put in the newest lap, new fastest lap. As he overtakes his teammate.
Kevin Magnussen now putting in his first time. Obviously not a very competitive time as he is 22 seconds off of the pace. As Perez goes third with a 1:56.0.
There's another yellow flag in sector 2 and then just green flagged again. I think a lot of people are trying to push obviously now, as we didn't see much in qualifying in all these turns, and a lot of them running into the runoff areas. As we see here a replay with one of the Haas's
of Magnussen here.
Magnussen also goes into the...
very closely missing the barrier there.
And we also see that
Leclerc
also going to the exact same place as the Haas earlier. Also running off into the area. So we're going to see a lot of that, I think, during qualifying now, as it's still a little bit wet. As Sainz now puts in a new fastest lap for himself at 0.025 behind his teammate Leclerc. So now Leclerc and Sainz 1 and 2 Ferrari. We still got just under 10 minutes as Hamilton now goes fastest at 1:54.6. So quite right now, nobody's really holding on to that top position as we thought it would be, because it's still wet and the track will be drying up and heating up as we keep going.
You can start to see now the dry line forming in certain areas. So hopefully we will get some dry running very soon as Norris puts himself up into 6th place with a 1:56.7. 2 seconds off of the pace of Hamilton.
And we're now following Zhou of the Alfa Romeo, who both Alfa Romeos are now back onto track now, having started in the pits for quite a while. So all cars on track. Zhou is coming up to this second sector and currently well off the pace of the top, but seems to be beating his rivals in the bottom half of the table in terms of timing. So he should put a half decent qualifying time now as Vettel goes 9th.
Verstappen is currently in the dropout zone as he is putting in a first fastest sector and a second fastest sector as he goes first for Q1 so far.
154.4, may as well call it 4. So
Hamilton
he
is
is
0.294 off of Verstappen so far.
But I don't think you'll see the Red Bulls come back into the pits anytime soon, as well they might well do just before they go back out again. But I don't think you'll see any of these races take a break in terms of retiring from the session or giving up the session to move to the next one, as this track is constantly evolving. So you'll probably see all of these races keep going to the very end of Q1, because as the track gets a bit drier, it gets a bit hotter, the times will get quicker and quicker and quicker. So nobody wants to risk losing out on that.
So currently Max is being asked about the conditions, and he's still saying that he wants intermediates for now. So it's not quite in that crossover zone yet for slick tyres.
I think what you'll see is the Inters stay on for the rest of Q1, and you may well see dry tyres for Q2 and 3.
Unless you get some very brave person taking a gamble and trying out the slicks. Only problem is in some of the sections it is still quite wet, as we have another yellow flag in Sector 3.
Yes, but again, somebody just running off into the runoff area. As we're following Stroll, who's putting in personal bests right now on his lap. He's currently sitting 8th in the table. The Aston Martins, as we said, have been quite quick this weekend, so we'll see how his lap time fares with the top and the big boys. Coming into his final couple of sectors here. He may well put in a fastest lap here. Oh, almost.
Still not on full ERS deployment, as their back lights are still flashing quite a lot, which shows that there's still a lot of lap time.
And Leclerc has just put in a fastest lap now at 1:54.2. So Stroll moved into 5th with that run there. So ahead of Russell of the Merc. Hamilton's still in 3rd right now. So the Mercs now for this qualifying session seem to be finding a little bit of pace. But right now it's looking quite normal in terms of, I suppose, we were hoping we'd see a lot of some surprise qualifying times from a lot of the races, but not really seeing it. Alonso is the one that's interesting for me, because he's been putting in really quick times, and his teammate Ocon has been putting in all right times, but Alonso currently at risk of going into the drop zone with just under 6 minutes to go.
Perez has now put himself up into 3rd position, slightly behind Max Verstappen, who we are seeing an onboard now of him being held up by Sergio Perez, his teammate. Sorry, that is the other way around. Perez has been held up by his teammate Max Verstappen.
Yes, there was quite a bit earlier when Max Verstappen started his hot lap that took him to the top about 5 minutes ago. And the Red Bull of Max Verstappen almost ending up in the wall there as he came around the corner, a little bit wide, almost lost it into the wall, but managed to recover and regain his line. And here we're following Alex Albon, who goes into the runoff section after locking up, wearing his bright blue helmet.
A lot of people out there drifting rather than keeping it on the track. Clearly still quite some tricky conditions out there.
There's Hamilton doing a rather nice drift for the cameras there as well. And we're heading into the last 5 minutes of qualifying 1. Right now, the Haas's are looking very much in danger, as well as the Williams. And Ricciardo is currently doing his lap right now, but it's gone slower in his first section already, and he is currently sitting 18th, so he really needs to speed up as Alonso goes 8th, which is what I'd hope we see.
Which has put now Yuki Tsunoda down in the bottom 5.
Or at risk of dropping into the bottom 5. Magnussen's now putting in better sectors for his first, and Schumacher following him.
As well as Daniel Ricciardo has now improved on his middle sector by half a second. So hopefully he is able to bring himself up out of that relegation zone.
It looks much like Ricardo's going to get held up there, though, as he's currently got a Williams ahead of him, who I think is also on a hot lap. But no,
He has jumped out the way,
jumped out the way. But I think that might well have held up Ricardo. We'll see now with his lap time, as the two Haas's are also following in it.
So can still put in another push lap.
Here comes Ricardo. Should actually put himself in the 157 or 56. And Ricardo jumps out of the relegation zone, as I'll call it, into 12th, just behind his teammate Norris. As we see Magnussen now going into the third sector, just ahead of his teammate Schumacher. They're both bettering all their sectors, so we'll see how they fare.
Will definitely be an interesting qualifying session here, as Mick Schumacher definitely has to start proving himself and start to outperform his teammate if he wants to keep his seat there at Haas.
It's interesting that both Russell, Stroll and Hamilton are all on outlaps as well as Verstappen, so nobody's really wanting to sit in the pits. All cars are on track still. So
as Magnussen comes to finish his lap and goes 6th fastest.
So the Haas suddenly comes out of nowhere. As we say, a track that is evolving. We see the Haas going to 6th and 10th in the respective tables. Yeah. So I'm sure you'll see some quick laps now from the top teams to try and beat them now, as the track is obviously constantly evolving. So those who want to start their lap as late as possible in this qualifying session may well be lucky in getting a quicker time than those that are their rivals. As Albon starts his lap now, and we'll see how this fares, because as we've been seeing, everyone starting their new hot lap has brought themselves out of that drop-off zone. So we will see how this track develops now in these last 2 minutes of Q1.
As we are currently sitting in the visor of Alex Albon, watching him getting close here to the DRS zone, just so close to the wall through there. As we've seen earlier in the weekend, some people managing to hit that wall with the likes of Lance Stroll destroying his left rear.
Interesting enough that people have only hit the wall so far in the practice sessions in practice 1 and 2 when it was dry, but today nobody's ended up in the wall so far when it's had wet conditions and in qualifying. So quite interesting that obviously the drivers have managed to hold their cars together and not form a risk in terms of getting damage to the car, but really trying it, Alex Albon here. He's just sliding about in some of these sectors. He really is pushing here. And
it's just such a tight track. You cannot make any mistakes here.
And we have moved into the final minute, as some of the racers are now started their final lap because they won't make it back in time.
George Russell has now put himself up into 5th place with his last time, ahead of Lewis Hamilton in 6th.
I think drivers that we might be looking at risk here might well be Mick Schumacher and the two McLarens, funny enough, because as I say, the track's constantly evolving, and you can see that the lower teams, as they go through, as Hamilton goes first, Hamilton finishes his last lap there and goes into first.
As Verstappen sets the fastest first sector, so we may see these times tumbling once again.
Norris only manages to improve himself to 10th from 11th, so moves up one place.
With the current evolution of this track, you never know if that is enough.
And Albon has not managed to get himself out of the drop. His time not quick enough, so he will not make Q2. Alonso, as we follow Tsunoda now as well. Let's see if Tsunoda can get himself out. Ricciardo is now at risk, but he is currently on his lap. Tsunoda jumps right up to 8th, so he's jumped out of the drop zone and should be safe.
So qualifying 1 is now over. People will be finishing their last flying laps. Let's see who can save themselves from the bottom 5.
Gasly has taken himself out for now. Vettel is now doing his lap. And also, again, everybody currently bettering their previous laps. We have yellow flags
in sectors 2 and 3, which will mean people in those sectors will have to abandon their laps.
As Vettel
looks like we have Lance Stroll gone off the track, possibly, or into a wall.
That's definitely affected a lap of one of the...
As Max Verstappen goes fastest with a 153.0, 0.1 seconds faster than Lewis Hamilton.
And we're now following Ricciardo. Will Ricciardo get himself out of the drop zone? He does not. Ricciardo, after all of the practice sessions being quicker than his teammate, does not make it out of Q1.
Let's see if Mick Schumacher can improve on his time and get himself out of Q1.
He has bettered his first section, and he was quite close to his teammates in Magnussen when he was doing his fast lap in terms of times in the first couple of sectors. So if he manages to keep this up, as he is now going,
Magnussen doing a massive slide through that sector.
and we follow Mick Schumacher with great interest now, as this is basically the last driver who can get themselves back into Q2.
Taking
Norris,
quite a lot of curb in that sector, which will make him lose a bit of time, unfortunately.
Norris is almost at risk, but should be safe.
He is in the pits at the moment, but if Mick Schumacher can improve on his time, that will take Lando Norris out in Q1.
So it's currently Bottas who's currently driver at risk. So Norris should be safe, provided Albon does not have a good lap. But I think Albon's finished his lap.
Mick Schumacher puts himself up into 14th position.
Mick Schumacher gets himself into Q2. And as a result, we now have our bottom five. The ones eliminated, the two Williams, Latifi and Albon, the Alpine of Ocon, which is quite interesting, the McLaren of Ricciardo, and the Alfa Romeo of Bottas. So drivers who have surprisingly made it into Q2. Guan Yu Zhou has managed to hold himself up there. Both the Aston Martins and Tsunoda put in quite a good run there in 8th position. So
as well as Mick Schumacher just getting himself out of that bottom 5 in the last few seconds.
Yes. Norris only just safe from Q1, which means that Q2 may well see a rather poor position start for McLaren as well, maybe, to see if Norris cannot improve what he's just done now.
And unfortunately for them, so far we have not heard of anyone taking penalties, so they will be starting exactly where they have qualified.
Yes. So that is Q1 done. So not really surprising, I suppose, except for really Mick Schumacher managing to get himself just out there at the end there. So good on him, but otherwise, and also Ricciardo, unfortunately, not making it to Q2, which I think is also a little bit of a surprise. But otherwise, business as usual. The Mercs seem to have found their pace in this qualifying session, though, so that's quite interesting.
Yes, they definitely seem to be in the mix now, which will be great to see.
So we now look to see what happens in Q2. The interesting thing, of course, is that it's dried up a bit on track. So we will see hopefully some slick tires on track, and we'll see who risks it first. But then we'll see these times hopefully significantly improve. But what also might happen as a result of that, because the track's still a little bit wet, is you might well see somebody take a risk a little bit too far, and you'll see somebody in the wall, which will cause a yellow flag and then cause some real concern in the qualifying session.
Possibly even a red flag if there's too much damage, as because this track is so narrow, it's extremely hard to get cars off of track. So often they have to red flag the session.
Yes. Luckily, there are quite a few runoff areas if people lock up, so they do go into those runoff areas. But as we say, in those certain sectors where there are no runoff areas and they should take a turn a little bit too wide and end up in a wall, it's most likely going to red flag the race, as there is very little maneuver space for them to go and get off the track.
So far, looking at our weather map, we do not see any more rain coming. It looks like it is going to miss the track, which is good news for us, which should make some interesting qualifying 2 and 3 sessions. Just waiting now for qualifying 2 to get started. Should be underway in the next few minutes. So Ocon is complaining on the team radio, saying that he had no brakes throughout his final lap, which would
indicate why he did not make it out of Q1. But at the same time, most drivers do tend to complain when they do happen to have a bad result, so we'll see whether or not that was in fact the case. But yes, having a look here at the Marina Bay circuit in Singapore, it is just a stunning track. It really is.
Amazing views of this incredible skyscraper with the flow, or the infinity pool that looks over the circuit. What a place to watch the race from.
And currently Christian Horner is on the radio and chatting to commentators and giving his opinions on Q1. I can tell you exactly what he's saying without actually listening, and he's just going to say, yeah, all going according to plan. We'll see whether or not the slick tires will come out in Q2 or not. and I'm sure that's pretty much the majority of the conversation that they'll have. As I said, there's not much to really be asking after Q1. It's pretty much been a stock standard qualifying session. No real big surprises. So we will see.
Except for Daniel Ricciardo for me.
Yes.
Which I was hoping to see him out qualifying his teammate today.
Yes, it would have been quite interesting if Daniel Ricciardo did manage to out-qualify Lando. And what is interesting is the fact that he was doing better in the practice sessions generally, was putting in quicker times. So quite disappointing, I think, that Ricciardo didn't manage to beat Norris. But I suppose the McLaren team will be upset at the position that Ricciardo has finished in, but also a little bit maybe relieved that Lando's car has gone a little bit quicker.
Well, let's see now. We have tyres being put onto Hamilton's car. Let's see if they are dry or if they are still inters. They are still intermediate.
We are still on inter tyres for Hamilton, who seems to be trying to get onto the track first. So we'll see how this qualifying session fares. The Mercs, as I say, suddenly found a bit of pace now. So we're now entering the Ferrari garage, and Ferrari are sending both their drivers out, almost hitting each other. It sort of sums up Ferrari, doesn't it? Both drivers released at the exact same time, and then one having to slam on brakes before the other can carry on. So Ferrari doing what Ferrari does best, which is making the most basic of errors. Schoolboy errors, really. And we will have started
blankets
Q2.
Are off now on Hamilton's tyres, so he is going to go out.
So 14 minutes left of Q2, and everyone is leaving the garage now. The Red Bulls are waiting for their orders to take the blankets off.
Let's see if they have followed suit with everyone else and are going still on intermediates, or if they're going to take a risk.
It looks to be intermediates.
Yes,
they are indeed intermediates. Everybody seems to be rocking intermediate tyres.
Still not happy with the amount of water on track, still waiting a bit for it to dry out.
I think you might see towards the latter end of this qualifying session, perhaps maybe some slick tyres come out, but everyone seems to be on the inters.
Track is looking very dry though, so only in a few small sectors do we still have some standing water. As Carlos Sainz is currently on his warm-up lap.
And all cars are now on track. So I think the sort of people I'd like to see in the top 10 from this qualifying session. I mean, obviously you want your big six there. You do. I mean, as much as you know it might be a bit funny for a Merc not to make it or something like that, you'd like to see your big six drivers there, the two Mercs, the two Ferraris, and the two Red Bulls make the top 10. But after that, I really want to see Alonso put in some very good times. I hope he should make Q3 with the times he's been putting in with practice this weekend. And I want to see how the two Aston Martins do. I would love to have both Aston Martins in the top 10. And
I'd like to see Sebastian Vettel doing well this weekend, as it is one of his favorite tracks that he races on the calendar, and it is his last time actually racing here, so it would be nice to see him have a good weekend.
100%.
Leclerc is currently on the radio.
Seems to be talking about tyres. Seems to be saying perhaps it might actually be time for slicks. He's saying that the sections that they've been going through are a little bit drier than they were, so you might start to see some teams think about some slick tyres.
Well, let's see if anyone dives into the pits before starting their hot laps. So far, Carlos Sainz is starting his lap.
Yes, Sainz is our first runner out on track.
And into turn 1.
The track is looking a lot more dry now. I would not be surprised at all if you saw people, at least after these first couple of laps, go back into the pits and say, right, let's put the slicks on, because realistically, this track is very dry. There are, I think, about two small sections of the track that have still got a little bit of water, but as a result of the racing now, it's quite dry. I mean, we follow Sainz's front wing here, and the track is very dry.
I think the majority of the water that we see is here at the moment in turn 8, but other than that, it is quite dry everywhere else. As he goes through turn 9 into the long straight before the bridge section.
And Leclerc has already purpled Sainz's first sector, so Leclerc is currently running fastest.
Verstappen is now starting his flying lap.
and everybody, as we say, is rocking into tires. But how long that'll last, we don't know. And it's also at this last turn here that Sainz has just gone through that we find is a little bit of dampness on the track. I think I'd rather call it damp.
As Pierre Gasly goes first for now.
Oh, he puts in a purple sector at least.
Norris taking that fastest lap time from Pierre Gasly for now with a 1:53.9. We should see that time being beaten quite substantially by the Ferraris, Mercedes,
we follow
and Red
Sainz
Bulls.
and Leclerc now to put in the real first times, I think, as we've seen with the time so far they've been putting in.
Alonso goes second so far with a 1:54.1.
But already into the 154s and 153s, which 153 was, I believe, the fastest in the last qualifying session, or was it 151? Sainz goes quite slow.
As Leclerc goes 1:52.3.
Sainz clearly pulls out of the aborted the lap at some point, as he's 6.5 seconds behind.
We have 10 minutes left of the session now.
Hamilton goes second behind Leclerc, quite a bit behind, 1.5 seconds.
As Verstappen comes to finish up his lap now in the last sector, going underneath the bridge.
Verstappen just driving. I mean, it's quite interesting. You always watch all these drivers, but whenever you pan onto Max Verstappen's car, it always just seems to be taking more risks. You just see him really brush the walls. It's really interesting to see how he really utilizes the whole track.
You can see how he's sliding mid-corner and just making those micro adjustments to stop the slide and keep himself happy as he goes second fastest so far with a 1:52.3, so 0.3 off the pace so far.
But Perez also goes third now. Also a very similar sort of lap time, just 0.45 or 0.47 just behind Leclerc. So Ferrari and Red Bull doing essentially what they should be doing right now. It's basically it's up in the air still, but I'm just surprised that we've not seen anybody come in for some soft tires. I think they're just worried a little bit about the dampness on the track, as Sainz just has to recover a bit of a drift there.
Taking some inspiration from his father, the rally legend Carlos Sainz Sr. Yet again, going for a slide through that corner.
Yes,
clearly not as happy as he was last session.
Yeah, perhaps then they're not moving to slick tires just because they are still sliding around a little bit on these inters.
But it also could be because the intermediates are overheating, as it is not wet enough anymore.
Absolutely agree. And let's see if Sainz can actually put a decent lap in here, because previously he did seem to abort it, so he should go.
Missed, so
there he goes, into fourth. So we have both Ferraris and Red Bulls in the top four, as per usual, essentially. And we'll see what Hamilton and Russell can do about that.
Russell so far is a bit off the pace of his own teammate, down in 13th, 3.2 seconds off the fastest lap time so far.
Yes, and now we see...
as he has gone into the pits, hopefully he is going for some slicks. Leclerc is currently on the radio.
He's saying it's very, very risky to go onto the dry tires, but he says it is quite dry in most of the sections of the track. So I think they're basically trying to make up their minds as to whether they should be switching to the slick tires. So we're following George Russell here. A replay of him locking up, and he commits to the lockup, not taking the runoff zone, which I think was quite a big risk considering he locked up for a long time there, and if he didn't recover, wouldn't have gone into the wall.
We have a replay of Mick Schumacher just going a little bit deep into turn 7, just going a bit over the curb over there and scraping his floor. Hopefully there is no damage for him there, and then locking up and almost going into the wall.
Not a great little sector for Mick.
No, not at all.
Which is quite disappointing. I'd love to see Mick make the top 10.
I really do want to see Mick performing quite well. At the moment he is outperforming his teammate, but we need to see him far outperforming his teammate in order to keep that Haas seat for next year.
So we're now following Gasly, who's going and putting his laps in. Alonso also running a lap. All of them have gone slower in their second sector.
Possibly from these intermediate tyres, just taking a bit too much of a heat cycle from there not being enough water on the track.
You see, because now if I'm a Ferrari or if I'm a Red Bull driver right now, I'm thinking our times are relatively good. They're quick times. These other guys don't seem to be getting close to their tires necessarily. But I think, yeah, as Leclerc says, as I was about to say, is they should probably take the risk and box for slicks because it really is quite dry. And we just hear now Leclerc goes
Yes,
onto the
ready
radio.
for slick tires. So that we'll see a bunch of drivers now diving into the pits to put on some slick tires before the end of the session, as we currently have 5 minutes and 45 seconds left.
Sainz is in the pits. One assumes they're going to change his tires as well.
It's interesting. George Russell came into the pits but came out again on a new set of intermediates. So him clearly not feeling that it is ready just yet for slick tires.
Probably trying to get the inters so that they don't overheat. A new set would then mean that he's got a set that'll get him a bit quicker, as George Russell really does need to get quicker because he's currently very much at risk of dropping in. Yeah,
Leclerc is going to, or as he's in the pits now, he's going to come out and attempt to go for some fast laps, hopefully on some slicks.
But
But
what's interesting here, here's our first set of slick tires, because the Ferraris have not actually put slick tires on for their box. They've just put a new set of inters on.
That looks like the Aston Martin may be putting on.
But the Aston Martins have both put on softs. They've both put on slicks. So we'll see how they fare here.
Verstappen is also in the pits now. Let's see what tires Red Bull puts on. Interesting that the Ferraris have not heard what Leclerc wanted and put him back onto another set of intermediates, possibly thinking that there's still some more time to extract out of those green wall tires.
I mean, it's a big risk for Ferrari to do that, because if these Aston Martins go out in softs and everyone follows suit and they do put in much bigger times, the Ferraris could very much be at risk of trying to put in one lap on slicks if they even have time for that.
Yes,
only 4 minutes
four
left.
minutes left of the session.
As I say, if I was Ferrari or Red Bull, I'd rather risk the softs, because you're more or less certain of your inter time, because they're not going to significantly improve the inter time enough to completely push you out of the session. But
we're still waiting to see what tires Verstappen and Sergio Perez put on, but so far we have Lance Stroll and Sebastian Vettel on slicks, as Hamilton now puts in the fastest middle sector, still on a set of intermediates.
I would love to see how these Aston Martins do now, because if Aston Martins jump to the front, you're going to see a huge panic from all these teams.
I think that is what Red Bull are waiting for at the moment. They're trying to see how the Aston Martins perform until they put them out onto new tires.
So Stroll is the first Aston Martin. He's coming into the third sector now on his outlap. So we'll see how. So Red Bull won't wait more than 2 minutes to get their drivers out, as obviously the track.
You need at least about 2 minutes on a warm-up lap to get around here.
And maybe even a little bit more, because obviously they're putting in the fastest laps at 150s. If you're going to sort of take a little bit of time and you have to get out of the way for blue flags and things, so they might well release them 2:30. So they've only got about 20 seconds to make a decision here and send them out.
Well, we have Lance Stroll coming into the final sector now to start his hot lap. So let us see what happens.
The thing is that you're also going to see whether or not everybody else has still come out
on an outlap on intermediate, so clearly they believe that it is not ready just yet for slick tires.
Yes.
As well as Sergio Perez, also on intermediate tires.
I think everybody rather safe, because it only seems to be Aston Martin that's taking that risk. So here we follow Stroll as he's on his new soft tires to see how they do. Had a little bit of a slide in one of the sections just before he started, and he goes off into the runoff zone.
So possibly just not
just
ready.
A little bit early for softs, it seems.
Was a good gamble from Aston Martin, but may end up with their two drivers out.
But I think there was Stroll on his out lap, so we'll see whether or not he can do something on his fast lap now, as he is still going, but still 1.6 behind.
Off of the pace at the moment on softs.
So we'll
Vettel
see if Vettel's doing anything.
It's also quite a way off at the moment, unfortunately.
So yeah, it is too early for softs, unfortunately.
Possibly in the next section.
So I think you'll see Red Bull abandon their fastest lap attempts. I think they'll just come straight back into the pits because they know they're safe now. Stroll, Vettel will continue doing this, but I think it's in vain unless they want to try and start a lap again.
Still into that hairpin section, not looking very grippy.
So basically, we're just following the Aston Martins right now, because everybody else is not really going to change too much. I mean, Hamilton has gone into second on his inters, but it's not too surprising, because the track will, as you say, get a little bit easier to race on. But right now, both Haas's at danger of dropping, Vettel's at danger of dropping, and Zhou and Tsunoda. We're quite upset if Vettel does manage to drop here. I think he must really be looking to try and get ahead of Gasly.
So close as well to Pierre Gasly, only 0.012 seconds.
Well, he's going to have to risk it again with the soft tires on. He's going to start, I think, another flying lap as soon as he finishes his current one, as he just needs to.
It might be that their tires, just because it's still a little bit wet, they need a double warm-up lap. So we may see them able to improve on their times, but let's see what happens in the next few minutes.
Very important for the two Haas's here to put into quick times as they start their, well, not the start, but as they're going through their final lap. We've only got 23 seconds left of this qualifying session, and we will see how they fare. Zhou says he has no grip, and Zhou is currently, I think, on the intermediate.
Yes, he is. He is down in 14th place at the moment. Mick Schumacher coming into the middle sector now. Let's see if he can improve on his past middle sector time.
Tsunoda has been going quicker, and he's currently at last in the pack, but he has been going quicker in all his sections, and he's coming around to the final thing. He should go quicker here.
Yes.
Jumps right up to 6th.
Wow, that's a very big improvement
on the intermediate tire, and Schumacher is still going quick here. Here comes Magnussen as well. Magnussen a little bit slow, I think, unless I'm mistaken. And just goes into 8th. So this is going to be quite at risk, because now we see George Russell of the Mercedes. He's in 9th already.
Having a big moment there as Alonso puts in the fastest middle sector.
I think you're about to see big jumps in the qualifier here, as everybody's got their last attempt here. Let's see how quick Schumacher can do here. Schumacher's got just 10 seconds to get round to try and save himself. He's got to get round 51, 52. Will he get ahead? Does not make it out. Mick Schumacher drops out. The interesting ones to follow now are the two Aston Martins who have both put in green sectors on themselves. Alonso with her fastest middle sector.
Where does Alonso go? Up into 6th goes Gasly.
Alonso might well jump to the top. Yeah, Alonso jumps into 5th.
Which puts George Russell down into the drop zone.
And now we focus on Stroll in the Aston Martin, who's going to go put in potentially. Will he save himself? No, he will not.
Just drops out, unfortunately.
So both of the Aston Martins took a big risk in going with the soft tires, and it didn't pay off. It did not pay off. I think if they went on intermediates again, they probably could have saved themselves, because the Aston Martins have been quick.
As George Russell has been eliminated from this session.
But indeed, George Russell has been eliminated.
It's quite a shock, considering that his teammate is up into 2nd.
Magnussen makes it in. So the Haas of Magnussen has made it into Q3, and Norris has somehow survived Q3. So I also think that you'll see Q3 start with softs rather than inters. But Toto Wolff looking as animated as ever.
At least he's not smashing his headphones today.
He's not particularly happy, I think, with George Russell having not managed to make Q3. I think that must be one of the first times George Russell hasn't made it into Q3.
I think this season, yes, it may be his first time not making Q3.
We have a replay of Sebastian Vettel in his final lap, because we did see him aborted. So we want to see why did he abort it. One assumes he goes into a runoff area as he comes to the hairpin. And
yes, he locks both tyres up into
both
that section.
That's unlucky.
Very unfortunate for Sebastian Vettel in his last Singapore Grand Prix here. Hopefully the rest of the season goes a bit better.
Right, so now we head into Q3, and we still have 2 Red Bulls, 2 Ferraris, a single Mercedes, because George Russell has dropped out. We have a Haas, we have an AlphaTauri.
We do indeed. 2 AlphaTauris, Pierre Gasly and
Tsunoda managed to make it in as well.
We have the single
McLaren of Lando Norris wrapping that up.
1 Haas of Kevin Magnussen. Yes. That makes up our top 10 so far for tomorrow's race. Obviously, the order will change a bit now with Q3. Let's see who can put themselves on the front row for tomorrow's race.
Now, the interesting thing, of course, we can't really look at the times and say, well, Max Verstappen only came 3rd in that qualifier session, because he didn't complete a final lap, as did Hamilton. But Leclerc did not come out and do a final lap, and has been quicker than Verstappen in each qualifying session so far. So we'll see what happens now in this final qualifying session, as now teams will likely go onto the slick tire, and we'll see some quicker laps hopefully there. And it will be interesting now because the first time today that people are going to be on the slick tire. So we'll see how they fare.
Let's see if they can improve on their times from practice 1 and practice 2, with the fastest time being a 1:42.3, I think it was. We may not be able to see them improve because of the track still being a bit wet, but if they are able to improve, that would be quite impressive. Just waiting for the last few minutes until this session gets underway for the last session here in Singapore before the race tomorrow. Our radar and predictions say that there may be rain forecast for tomorrow's race, which could also make it very interesting, as we saw during practice 3 how the Ferraris were extremely dominant in the wet. Watching our radar here, we can still see that there is no rain going to happen in Q3. The clouds are just going to miss the track, which is great news for all of us watching, as it has been brilliant to watch how the track has evolved from each session. We are about to get underway now for Q3. As Sebastian Vettel says on the radio that, well, with frustration that they are out. Way too early for slicks, unfortunately for them.
Yes, very early for slicks. Well, they did take the risk. They sort of thought they'd take the risk. I think the risk was right to take. What I think was poor on Aston Martin's behalf was sending both drivers out on
Yes,
the
they
set
should
of
have
slicks.
split the strategy.
If you split the strategy, you probably could have had one driver in the top 10, which would have made it a bit better for them in terms of a situation for tomorrow. So poor strategy in that regard.
We're busy watching a replay here of George Russell's lap, possibly what caused him to be down in the bottom. Just getting quite a lot of oversteer through some of the tighter corners, just showing that he's not 100% comfortable in the car right now.
And now we're following here. We're seeing Vettel's double lockup again.
As we're hearing that they definitely predict that we should see the majority of the pack on slicks now during Q3. Let's see if they will start possibly on slicks or if they will move over later in the session.
What is very interesting this weekend so far is that given the controversy around the FIA regulations that we've seen and the outburst that some people have had about potentially Red Bull, they all believe, breaching the regulations, how much we've seen Christian Horner in front of the media. He has been available just before the start of, I think, every practice session. He's been on the...
As we see a Red Bull going out, on slicks.
So the first car out onto the track seems to be Max Verstappen on slicks. So what is interesting is that Red Bull very, very rarely go as the first car. But they are lining themselves up as the first to go out. So that'll be very
not
interesting.
Wanting to get caught in any traffic of any sort. So just trying to get a clean lap in today for their Q3 run.
And the two Ferraris now going out onto track. But yes, as I say, Christian Horner really putting himself in front of the media this weekend.
Yes, often he does speak to Sky Sports during the race, but he has been definitely in the news quite a lot. As we see Ferrari switching their tyres up, they were going to start on intermediates, now changing their minds at the last second.
So yes, Ferrari not too sure on their strategy at the moment. So
they were about to send that car out as well. They were down off the jacks on the tyres, and now they've just decided to change up after seeing Red Bull on the Red Bull soft tyres.
They released signs in the Inters. I suppose actually,
they're doing the correct thing.
Indecisive, but they're doing the correct thing because they sent
Perez
signs
is
out.
Also on softs at the moment.
They've sent signs out on Inters, whilst Verstappen and Perez have both gone out on softs. The Merc over here of Hamilton is going out on softs as well. And so they've changed it clear to softs because they're going to try and match Red Bull. But what they can do is they can use Sainz as an indicator for the Inters.
Yes.
And if Sainz's time is quicker, then they may well bring in Leclerc and then Red Bulls have pretty much stuffed themselves up, and they're going to have to start thinking, well, are we going to persist with the soft tyre, or are we going to go out? As most of the teams have gone out on the soft tyre, one imagines it's the quicker tyre.
Well, normally if they do go out on the soft tyre for a Q3 run, they will normally do a warm-up lap and then possibly one, maybe two hot laps. Because you have to remember, if we do have a dry race tomorrow, they will be starting on whatever tyre they set their fastest lap on. So they do not want to burn those tyres out too much, otherwise they have to race with that tomorrow.
Yes.
Verstappen halfway through the track now on his warm-up lap, just backing up the rest of the pack right now.
And it's the Haas of Magnussen that follows him.
We have not seen if the DRS has been enabled as of yet. So right now, still deemed a wet track.
So only Tsunoda and Magnussen are on inters apparently. So Sainz was sent out on softs. So it's interesting that they were sending Sainz out on softs, and Charles Leclerc was originally going to go out on inters. And we see there that Verstappen was on the radio to his team boss. They seem to be basically saying they'd go and do a couple of laps, and we'll see the conditions after those laps and in terms of the tyre. As Verstappen starts the first hot lap of Q3 Singapore.
The first hot lap that we are seeing from any of the top teams on slicks today. Let's see if it is at least suitable for those conditions right now.
I think you may well see a couple of the teams go off into the runoff areas because they might not just be used to them yet. It's a lot more grip, supposedly, these soft tyres, and they're going to expect a lot more grip through certain sectors, which they might not get if it's got a little bit of damp. So
well, let's see now into this braking zone into turn 7. He has set the fastest first sector so far. Very clean into that section. No lockups as we saw on Vettel's car. Someone has taken his first sector away from him, possibly Sergio Perez.
Possibly Sergio Perez, or could even be Alonso, who is also following in, I think. I think Alonso is close to Verstappen, if I'm correct. No, I'm not correct at all. It's either Tsunoda or Magnussen, because those are the ones following Verstappen. So, interesting that. Yeah, Tsunoda or Magnussen has put in the fastest first sector ahead of Verstappen, so we'll see. Might well be taken already from somebody else.
As we see him going through that hairpin section, just having a slight bit of oversteer as he sets the fastest middle sector now.
We'll see if he holds on to it.
Quite exciting here into the last 8 minutes of qualifying in Singapore. As we see some drops coming down. This could definitely make it very interesting. Sliding underneath the bridge section. Coming into the last set of chicanes and then down the main straight.
It looks like the slicks are still slower because we're only going to get to see a 155, 156, 157, 156.
Much slower than
the inter tires
from last session, as Hamilton has gone fastest in the first sector and second sector.
So Yuki Tsunoda goes top, as I say. So Yuki Tsunoda obviously purpled the first sector ahead of Verstappen originally, and Tsunoda set the fastest lap ahead of Verstappen. So those inters still working a bit better than the softs right now.
But they seem to be working very well on Hamilton's car, who is currently put in the fastest middle sector, but his first sector has just been taken away from him.
One assumes that will have been from Vettel, as he has just finished the first sector. Verstappen. So Verstappen has just purpled the first sector again, I believe, as we see Hamilton coming into the last turns
now
here.
Goes second.
And does Hamilton go quicker than Tsunoda? He does,
yes, he does.
Quite a lot. So the softs
still slower than our Q2 times.
It is still slower than the Q2 times, but looks to be much closer to what the time should be, however. So now you're thinking, well, softs and inters are competing well with each other. So I think most of these races will stay on the softs. They
Very interesting to see Yuki Tsunoda all the way up into second position at the moment, ahead of Charles Leclerc.
And Magnussen, who started on intermediates, has come in and has gone out now on softs. So I imagine you'll see Yuki Tsunoda come in very quickly to try and get onto softs, because clearly I think the softs are getting quicker and quicker and quicker.
Verstappen does not seem to be very happy. Still a bit slidey through some of those sections. Coming now underneath the bridge into the last set of chicanes.
I believe he might well have abandoned his lap. It seems to have gone slow through the one sector there. Yeah, I think if Verstappen abandons his lap. Although I say that Verstappen does go second.
Now with a 140, a 154.
Still quite a way off Hamilton's time.
Hamilton has gone a whole second, 1.2 seconds
Hamilton
up on his previous time.
is really motoring around this sector, this whole track really. I mean, it's quite incredible how much quicker Hamilton's going than these other cars, because Verstappen just put in a lap with 1.2 slower than...
as he has a big moment there, but keeps it on the track.
As I say this, the McLaren of Norris has just put in a time that's just 0.3 off of Hamilton's current fastest lap.
As Alonso goes fastest with a 152.5.
So we really are seeing this track transform. I think you'll see these soft tyres are definitely the ones. That's why Yuki Tsunoda's in the pits.
Now Leclerc has gone fastest.
151.
This track is definitely evolving quite quickly here.
And Hamilton now goes fastest again, 151.0. So I think you might see some sub 150s. There's a yellow flag in sector 3. I'm sure it'll just be a runoff section. I'm sure we'll see a green flag.
Gasly looks like he is stopped. Hopefully it is just into the runoff zone, as Max has now set the first fastest sector. Gasly has still stopped. He's getting himself out of the way.
He's reversing very far onto track with the yellow sector.
Luckily his team will be telling him that there's no one behind him. Verstappen has gone purple first sector and green in the second sector. Let's see if he is able to improve, as he has a bit of a slide into
Big slide. That'll take away time. Verstappen not having a happy time out here on these soft tyres.
Still, with a bit of wet, it's quite tricky out there, clearly.
I don't think you'll see Verstappen better his time against Hamilton. Yeah, Hamilton doing exceptionally well so far this qualifying session.
Oh, big moment there.
And a huge moment from Verstappen, almost hitting the wall. I think he's really struggling on this track, though. He does manage to put in just
the second fastest time right now.
Second fastest time.
1.3.
So if he hadn't had those big moments, he would have definitely have gone fastest lap. As Perez is now currently putting in 2 green sectors for himself, he's going around very quickly.
Well, let's see now if Red Bull box Max Verstappen and put on a new set of softs and send him out for one last hot lap. As Perez is now coming into the final corner to set his...
Perez might well go... Yeah, Perez goes into third ahead of the 2 Ferraris. So this track permanently and constantly evolving. Magnussen still without a time.
Is Magnussen out on track?
Magnussen is out on track.
He's in the middle sector right now.
So very interesting that Hamilton has been completely leading this Q3. You know, Mercedes, as I say, out of nowhere for today. I mean, George Russell managed to take himself out of Q2. Obviously, was not happy, but Hamilton really bossing Q3 so far.
Magnussen is now on track. Putting in some good sectors for himself. Not the fastest first sector, but a good personal best in the middle sector. Now coming into the last corner.
Unfortunately, not doing enough to really better his position. Just goes into 8th ahead of Tsunoda and Gasly. But still a relatively slow lap compared to everybody else. Looks like they're preparing a new set of softs for Leclerc as he's going to come through. So I imagine we'll see the same tactic from all the other teams as well.
As we have a replay of Pierre Gasly having his moment into the runoff area. Let's see what caused this. Still very, very unhappy into those sectors leading up to this.
What's interesting is how he decided to go into the runoff area where he probably could have, if he just committed to the turn. As much as the lockup happened, he might well have made the turn anyway.
You can see when he stopped there how his tyres were quite wet on the top.
Yeah, we have Leclerc doing a fast lap. He's just put in the fastest sector 2. So he is currently beating Hamilton's time, and now as Verstappen starts his last hot lap, because they're not going to make it round in time. Unless they try and do 2 hot laps in a row.
As he goes 6/10 faster than anyone else so far in the first sector.
So Verstappen really motoring. We're in for a very exciting end here. Leclerc's on the radio.
Could not catch, unfortunately, what he said.
Leclerc on the radio in the middle of his hot lap, which is quite a scene. Alonso goes fastest at a 150.7. Alonso currently top with just 1 minute and 10 seconds to go. One hopes that Alonso's going to go again on the
Leclerc now
track.
across the line to go first. So
Leclerc,
far with a 149.
it's a sub 150. So Verstappen also motoring here, should also get a faster second sector here. I think you're going to see a very exciting finish here because the track is just getting faster and faster and faster the more you stay out on track.
Verstappen goes 7/10 now faster than anyone else in the middle sector.
If
Clearly getting a very clean lap together now.
If Verstappen can cross the line before the end, he'll put an even quicker lap, one imagines. So you're basically wanting to try and get over this line as late as possible because you're going to get a quicker lap time in. As Verstappen comes into the final couple of corners here, looking to hopefully better his time, put himself onto pole. We've only got 22 seconds left.
Just seems so slow coming through.
Will Sainz make it back for another lap, or will this be his last lap? I think this will be his last lap. It's definitely Perez's last lap.
Looks like Verstappen may have held back there at the end just to prepare for his next flying lap.
Verstappen abandoned his flying lap, but he's not going to come out just ahead of before the qualifier.
He did make it out just before.
Did he make it just out before?
Yes, that was him into the last corner. So let's see if he's able to improve on that last lap. Let's hope so. Otherwise, that lap would have been abandoned.
Alonso also currently bettering his times in his quick laps. Perez goes second. Leclerc currently sitting pole. Perez in second.
It's very risky from Max Verstappen, as if anyone has incidents here in this last lap, in this last few seconds.
And Hamilton's currently going quickest right now, and as he puts in the purple second sector, Alonso pushed himself into fourth on the grid. It's only Hamilton and Verstappen. Hamilton, Verstappen are the only ones left to really do this. I mean, Leclerc, I think, is done his lap. So will Hamilton go on to pole? He should do. His time is going very quickly. Oh, he doesn't. Just
third place for Hamilton so far.
The top three are so close together. It's ridiculous. Let's see if now Verstappen can put a quicker second sector. He has put a quicker second sector because his first sector was slower. Will he make it in? Currently sitting Leclerc 149.4, Perez just 0.02 behind that, and Hamilton third just 0.05 behind that. Exceptionally close to the top.
Let's see if Verstappen can put in some clean sectors now. Coming through the last, just losing it at the rear. Hopefully not
looks like Verstappen's going to have. He's lost too much time. He has not had a happy Q3. I don't think he's going to make it into the top three.
Very disappointing as he comes into the pits.
There he comes to the pits. He abandons his lap and he's smashing He hits his steering wheel as he comes into the pits, realizing his mistakes.
He should not have abandoned that last lap. That could have given him P1.
Verstappen finishes 8th. He was told to box. He had an issue with his car. Max has an issue.
He did not have enough fuel in the car if he did finish that lap.
So Verstappen's not a happy chap. Q3 does not work out for Verstappen. For Hamilton, Leclerc and Perez, however, it worked out quite well. Leclerc on pole, Perez in second, and Hamilton third. The space between first and third was 0.05 seconds. Almost nothing to separate them. We are set up for a brilliant race tomorrow because Verstappen in the weekend that he could potentially, obviously as certain things went a certain way, win the entire championship, only starts on the grid in 8th on a track that is so difficult to overtake.
So it looks like Red Bull have definitely made a bit of a blunder there. They should not have told him to abandon his fast lap because that would have put him possibly up into second.
But they did have to abandon their fast lap because of the fuel issues that he had. If he finished that lap, he may well not have made it back to the pits.
But the lap before, if they had not abandoned that's what I was meaning. They should not have abandoned that lap before.
Their first fast lap.
He will not be very impressed.
So Red Bull not happy right now, though they do have Perez on the front row.
Another replay of Max coming into the pits. Very animated on the team radio. Clearly not very happy at what the team decided to do in the end. Max
told to box, and not been told why until he until it finished. Very angry Max gets out of his car.
Being told on the team radio that they will discuss afterwards why they decided to pit him. This puts him in a very bad place for tomorrow's race, unfortunately. We have seen Max being able to fight his way through the grid, but this historically is a very difficult track to overtake on.
So Red Bull really not putting themselves in a great position, and borderline going to have to you have to start thinking about the Constructors' Championship more than the Drivers' Championship. It shouldn't be in risk of either of those, even with this weekend necessarily going badly. But one should
can't afford to make stupid mistakes at this point.
But one should be thinking now that Perez is their driver for tomorrow, because on such a track like this, to try and give the main strategy and the best possible position for Max is a bit futile with him starting in 8th. The likelihood of managing to overtake many people on this sort of a track is you're going to have to just hope for safety cars essentially and some rain, because otherwise you need to back Perez to try and take Leclerc just off the grid tomorrow.
They're definitely going to have to work the strategy quite well tomorrow. Definitely hoping for a few safety cars here, but definitely not very impressed in Red Bull's call there at the end today.
A very mixed day for Mercedes as well, because Mercedes have lost the driver in Q2, but then Hamilton almost putting himself on pole. He was bossing the whole session, and then only right at the end did he not manage to hold his pole position.
I'm sure Charles Leclerc will be very happy with his performance today. Where did Carlos Sainz finish? In
Carlos Sainz finishes in fourth,
which is good for Ferrari, because then they can use Carlos Sainz to run the strategy for tomorrow. Having 2 cars in the top 5 definitely gives them a big advantage.
So, the grid for tomorrow reads: Charles Leclerc on pole, Sergio Perez 2nd, Lewis Hamilton 3rd, Carlos Sainz 4th, Fernando Alonso in 5th, Lando Norris in 6th, Pierre Gasly 7th, Max Verstappen in 8th.
Kevin Magnussen in 9th, and Yuki Tsunoda finishing off our top 10 in 10th.
So a rather poor showing for Red Bull today in terms of really stuffing up Max Verstappen's qualifying sessions. Although, as much as he might complain to the team, one should have to look to himself, considering how poorly he was doing on his softs when he started his runs compared to everybody else. He was much slower than everybody else in trying to gain that time on a soft. Wasn't adapting as quickly as the rest of the field. So
starting to put it together though in the last 2 flying laps that he did, but unfortunately backed off of his best flying lap, so we never know what that time would have been.
Yeah. And I never quite understand the concept of backing off before then starting another fast lap, because one assumes if you're really going for it, surely you're going to go into the first section, more or less at the same sort of speed as you would have if you were going for it from your flyer.
Yes. This will be Sergio Perez's 3rd front row start of the season. Very good performance by him today. I'm sure he will be very happy, as well as his father, who we always see on the pit wall, always smiling.
So a very interesting race in store for us tomorrow. Ferrari should be smiling. If you're a Ferrari fan, you should be smiling, because
the rest of our grid will be though Russell in 12th, Stroll in 13th, Schumacher in 14th, Vettel in 15th, Guan Yu Zhou in 16th, Bottas in 17th, Ricciardo down in 18th, Ocon 19th, Albon 20th, and Albon 19th and Latifi down in 20th.
Yes.
Sorry.
All of those numbers were 1 up, but it's fine. You get the idea. Yes. So, as we say, a very interesting race. Lewis Hamilton looks quite chuffed with life, which is rare this season. So we'll see how he fares tomorrow in the Mercedes.
Good to see him smiling. Could it be his first win of the season to keep his all-time record of 1 win every season that he enters Formula 1?
I doubt it very much. Simply because look, I mean, I say that. I mean, he should have won. He should have won not the last race, but the race before. The strategy really let him down. But unfortunately, I doubt it, considering the type of track we've got tomorrow. Unless Ferrari really do stuff up their strategy, I don't see a way for him to get ahead unless he gets a fantastic start off the grid. But there aren't very many places to overtake on this track. So He's going to have to really, really hold on to a strategy very, very well. And we know how good Red Bull in their strategy are. So
as well as we know how good Sergio Perez is at defending. So
exactly.
if he does get quite close to Perez, Perez will not make it very easy for him to
No.
overtake.
So that is the day done. The day's racing done. We see a Ferrari on pole. We see Max Verstappen starting in 8th after a complete blunder in Q3.
Definitely a big shock today to see Max down in 8th starting for the race tomorrow. But hopefully it should make some exciting racing for tomorrow. Hopefully he will be able to get some overtakes done and hopefully take the World Championship if he is able to make his way all the way up to
Yeah,
first, which I highly
we won't
doubt.
see a world championship, I don't think, tomorrow. But certainly, one would hope that Max will fight his way through the grid and finish somewhere near the top. But indeed, we will see you for that tomorrow. So that was qualifying. That was Formula One today. Very interesting indeed. We are set for a very, very good race in Singapore tomorrow. So we will catch you then. I've been Mark. This is Reese, and this is Forever Motorsport. We will catch you again tomorrow. Goodbye.